You get to do it.
Hello. Hello, and welcome to another thrilling rendition of Women's History Month here at St. Paul's. And this week we're interviewing Pastor Delaney. So, Delaney, as we celebrate Women's Herstory Month, who stands out to you along your journey as someone who encouraged you in your call to ministry?
Thank you for asking. I have wanted to be a pastor most of my life. I think I was like 8 when I told my pastor that I wanted to be a pastor. And while there have been people who have said I shouldn't do that because of my gender, and one person because of my personality, that's not even there. Um, all the people in my faith home where I grew up were like really encouraging to me. So a couple people who stand out, one is my pastor, Beverly Joe Arnold. She was my pastor my whole life from the time we started going to the church when I was like 7, until I got ordained. She waited until I was ordained to retire. So she was like really, really important to me. Pastor Arnold showed me what it was like to be a strong person. She was a strong leader, kind of like a strong personality. She was clear about what she thought about things. And I thought that was really great to see. I have always gravitated toward people who are clear about what they think about things and are not afraid to tell you in a kind way. But I don't really like to guess what someone's thinking. I prefer to hear what they really are, thinking about and what they're hoping for. So Pastor BJ was a really, really good example for me of what a person who isn't male could be like as a pastor. Um, and then when I was an intern, my supervisor, John Soraka, is one of my favorite people. He is just like so kind, and he's like a humble person and a gentle person. And he was really, really helpful for me as a seminarian. And I remember he told me that the only thing I needed to do, I think about this a lot, I talk about it a lot, is love the people. That's like the only thing I had to be good at to be a pastor. And that made a big impact on me because I think that's part of what I like about pastoring is the people part. And so having Pastor John encourage me was pretty cool. And then the last person I always think about is my mom. My mom has, like, I don't know, we've gone to church my whole life and my parents took us to church. But my mom is just a really cool human. She really, really cares about people who are not the same as her. She raised all 3 of us, my siblings and myself, to be concerned about more than ourselves. That was like her main goal. She told me recently, because I've become a parent, that in becoming a parent, what she was most concerned about was how to raise decent humans and kind people who would be engaged with the world around them and care about more than themselves. And I just really admire her. And I think that that affect is good for being a pastor, but also like she encouraged me to do what I'm doing. And she always encouraged me to respect and listen to lay people. That was really important to her as a lay person in the church. And now as a pastor, when we talk about pastory things, she often brings that up in one way or another, just like focusing on the dignity of the people entrusted to my care and why it's important to pay attention and respect them and be grateful when they want to be leaders and not be threatened. So
Yeah,
that's,
and that's an important part of faith for all of us is to just be kind, love the people.
yeah. Yeah. And like acknowledge that they have something to offer, that everyone has something to offer that is worth receiving.
Yeah. And I think you do a good job of that as a pastor, and I hope to
Thanks.
inspire other people to do that as well. How do you perceive your gender as impacting your leadership in the church, in your life?
hmm Yeah. So I formulated these questions. And everybody I've asked this one is like, oh, I've never thought about that. And that could not be further from my experience. I think about this almost every day.
You should write a book about it.
Oh, yeah, really? Um, in an academic pursuit lately in my life, I've been thinking about this and considering writing said book you just mentioned. Um, but yeah, so I think that the paradigms of pastoring in our world, our Western European descent world, are based on patriarchal models of leadership in the German descent churches, like the one that I serve, like Lutheranism in general, there's a thing called the Herr Pastor that we've talked about, you and me, before, but that's like the man pastor in charge of the congregation, and he is in charge. He has the vision, he has the ideas, he is the boss.
Like the pastor is the CEO kind of model.
Exactly, which has translated into our current denomination. The bishop is the CEO. That's one of the modalities of bishop in our ELCA. So like that approach to leadership of the one person who has the ideas and stands in the front and tells the people where they're going is distinctly rooted in capitalism and patriarchy. My favorite words. And also like doesn't work for people who aren't male, because that's a default setting that's vested in male bodies and male modes of leadership. So I think it's possible for people who aren't male to function that way. I think that we often do, because that's the culture we're swimming in, especially as pastors, because the church is, you know, like the pastoring is a male dominated field historically. And so most of the systemic ways of pastoring are rooted in that identity. But I think for me, um, I think about being a pastor as a facilitator. It's really rooted in that loving the people, but also honoring that the people have something to share that matters. So I am most interested in listening to the congregation and perceiving alongside them what it is that they care about and where they want to go, and noticing the Holy Spirit in that process, and then helping them make group decisions to go forward. And people may not think that that has anything to do with gender, but I think that has a lot to do with gender. Because I think that a person who has not been historically centered by an institution, in our case, the church, knows what it feels like to be ignored, or knows what it feels like to be told no. And because of that, I think it's really important to make sure that there's a lot of yes happening, and that it's not about the one person with the power, but that authority gets shared. And I think that's really, to me, is really, really rooted in my identity as a woman, but also as a feminist woman. Like, I really care about facilitating experiences so that everyone's voice can be honored and received, and then we can make our choice together moving forward. So, like, communal authority and facilitating work together is how I perceive pastoring. And it works for me, because I don't think it would work very well for me if I tried to do the hair pastor modality and just show up and be like, well, I have an idea. Here's what it is. Let's do it. I think that would be really alienating to people in the church. And I also think I probably wouldn't have a lot of buy-in. You know, like if somebody came to you and was like, we're going to do this thing. If you didn't want to do that thing, you'd be like, cool, I'm not going to do that, but I'm not going to tell you, right? I'll just like silently not do what you think we're going to do. So,
Or say, okay, great job. You can do that.
exactly, like, cool, go forth. So, yeah, I think about this all the time. And for me, it feels deeply rooted to my way of being a pastor, which is listen to the people, stand at the back of the room, facilitate the process, and try to help them get clear within themselves about what it is that you notice between all of the conversation, instead of telling them what to think and talk about.
Yeah, and it sounds like your gender influences that by being in a body that is not what the patriarchy is like built for. So then you have an idea of like, well, this is what it's like to not be heard or to not be included. And so as a leader, I want to include as many people as I can and make sure that I'm hearing all the voices and all the perspectives in order to make the best decision for the group. And
Totally.
I yeah, I think
Yeah, and I
that's
think it
a great
goes back
call.
to what my mom said about like not being threatened by people. I you know me, we're friends. I was your internship supervisor. I have a strong personality sometimes. I think most of the time I'm just me. And like sometimes that means I'm going to tell you what I think about something. I am also a clear person, and that can be really, really off-putting to these other modes of leadership. It can be something that causes people to feel defensive or not want to listen to me because I'm like too direct. And so I try to be pretty aware of that, that like there are people who communicate in ways that are different from me. And if they are entrusted to my care and I'm their pastor, it is my responsibility to listen to them and try to figure out what it is they're telling me without becoming defensive about the way they're delivering their thoughts. So that could mean somebody who is completely opposite from me, right? Like a really passive, hard to understand what they're saying for me because they're going around the point, or a really clear person who wants to tell me what they think. Um, I think that that's important to me to figure out how do I listen to them so that they don't feel like who they are is not the right way of sharing. That however it's right for them to share is okay for me because it's not about me. I don't need them to be a certain way. And I think that feels really rooted in that thing you were just talking about of being a person who historically is not the one that everybody wants to listen to in a congregational setting. So I try really hard to listen to everyone and actually care about what they're saying. And that's not always easy, right? Sometimes it's irritating to do this job, but most of the time I think it's not that hard because I love them.
Well, you're doing that right, loving the people. And then last question, what are you doing to care for yourself or celebrate yourself for this Women's History Month?
I planted my seeds this week.
Yay, spring is
That's what I've
coming.
been doing. Yeah, I'm a gardener, you know. So I planted some broccoli and some flowers in my basement. And I also have a 6-month-old, 7 months today, OMG, a 7-month-old baby. And he's a beautiful prince. So I love him and I just hang out with him all the time and have fun. So those are the things I'm doing to care for myself, enjoying my child and planting my garden.
Excellent.
Yeah,
New life all around.
all around. Thanks for talking to me about this.
Yeah, thanks for sharing your story and your perspective.